Yeah, so this is going to be a very introductory level talk, although we'll talk about some more advanced concepts. So I will start with some very basic concepts for each part, and I will actually move forward to much more advanced concepts, including case studies. So this webinar is made that if you don't know much about China and the China digital ecosystem, you will still be able to follow. And if you are more experienced, maybe you already are trying to enter China or you're already running campaigns, you will still get benefits from the webinar. And once again, as I said, this is recorded. It will be posted online on YouTube, and the slides will be sent to everyone. So you don't need to worry about recording or taking screenshots. So the first thing I want to talk about is that China is actually quite hard to get into. Most people have very overinflated expectations when it comes to entering China. And this is something, maybe the main thing we have to fight when we talk with foreign companies. They have the feeling that because China is a big market, they will be able to easily enter and make money from it. Actually, sometimes the opposite is true. It's true, it's a very big market, but because it's a very big common market, it also means that the competition is extremely fierce, maybe much fiercer than what it is in the US, definitely much fiercer than what it is in Europe, and I can talk about it being myself French. So it's a hard market. So what do I personally know about this market? I've been living in China for 6 years. Started by working for large companies, for Schneider Electric. I speak Mandarin, of course. And for 2 years, I ran WeChat as an agency. We help some large companies use WeChat for their marketing strategy, including Nestle, Bosch, NFL, and more. And since about 1 year, we shifted to also helping SMEs get into the Chinese market. And this was by developing our own platform to help foreign companies create stores on WeChat. And before that, I was working for the BCG and studying in France and in UK. So yeah, that's kind of rough overview of my background, just to give you a sense of where I'm coming from and why I somehow qualified to talk about these topics. So what we're going to talk about is really a broad overview of the Chinese digital ecosystem, starting with e-commerce in China. So what are the main platforms? How exactly is it? How complicated is it to list on these platforms? We'll talk about WeChat, of course, which is the main social media in China, and we'll see much more than that. And in the last part, we'll talk about the smaller applications which can help you do more of a guerrilla style marketing in China. And for each part, we'll conclude on how can they be applied on a practical basis, because it's really not it's not a theoretical talk. It's really about how to practically use these insights in order to promote your brand in China. So let's get started, and let's talk about e-commerce in China. So once again, I'm really gonna start from the basics. So I will describe the maybe most famous fight which is happening today in e-commerce in China, which is between Tmall, which is the largest B2C marketplace in China, owned by the group Alibaba, and Jingdong, JD.com, which is their main competitor. So if you look at the e-commerce market today in China, it is still mostly dominated by Tmall. Tmall owns about almost 57% of the market, Jingdong 25%, and the rest of the market is extremely fragmented. So as soon as you go past Jingdong, the nearest competitor is below 4% of market share. And if you look at Amazon is actually 1%. So maybe the graph is a bit confusing, Amazon is 1%, and all of the other actors combined, which are not on this chart, are 9%. So big domination from Tmall, and Jingdong being somehow close follower, at least the closest, who at least has the same order of magnitude than Tmall. And it's important to see that this picture is only for B2C e-commerce platforms, but we'll talk later about WeChat, because WeChat is a completely different paradigm when it comes to e-commerce. So quite a few sales today are happening not on these platforms, but on individual WeChat stores created by WeChat accounts. And we'll talk more about that later. But what I want to say first is Tmall definitely the winner today in B2C e-commerce. So if you want to list on these platforms, you're going to have to, of course, pay the price because they have the traffic. So the transaction fees are quite high. They range between 3 to 7% for Tmall and 5 to 8% for Jingdong. So the variability depends on the industries, depends on whether or not you use their payment systems like Alipay, depends if you use their shipping systems, in the case of the logistic solutions, in the case of Jingdong. And the management fees are not very high, but can be quite significant for small companies. Usually around 10,000 USD deposit and 1,000 USD per year for management fees. And this is the criteria if you're in China. So this is for companies which actually have a registered company in China and are using this company to sell. If you're an international company, if you don't have a structure in mainland China, so when I talk about China in this context, I talk about mainland China, not including Hong Kong. So if you don't have a company in mainland China, the story is going to be quite different. So both of these platforms, Tmall and JD, have cross-border offers. So the Tmall Global in the case of Tmall, and JD Worldwide in the case of JD. But this offer is actually very restricted to companies which at least have reached 100 million USD of sales worldwide and who have a large search volume in China. So what does it mean as large search volume in China? Tmall has, of course, access to all the search volume from their marketplaces, including from Taobao. So Taobao is a C2C marketplace in China. It's kind of the local eBay. And you're going to have a lot of individual Chinese sellers who are going to resell foreign brands. So people who might travel to France, purchase a few products, come back to China and resell it to their friends. And they might resell on Taobao. So Taobao can see, Alibaba can see the search traffic on these marketplaces of this kind of second-hand resales that in China are called Daigo. And based on that, they're going to select the right brands for Tmall Crossborder. So if you don't have this search volume, if you don't have a bunch of resellers basically already smuggling your product to China and selling it on Taobao, it's going to be very difficult for you to get on Tmall Crossborder. And it's very costly. It's much more costly than local operations. Usually, most of the Tmall partner, because in order to sell on Tmall Crossborder, you need to go through what's called a Tmall partner or TP. We'll suggest that you invest at least $1 million USD during the first year in order to get a significant return on investment. So as a summary, Tmall and Jingdong really own a large piece of the pie when it comes to e-commerce in China. If you operate in China, they can be more affordable to get in, although you're still going to have to pay significant amounts of money to get traffic because these are very competitive marketplaces. And if you're outside China, then it's really only for the very large companies. Does anybody else have audio issues? I hear robot voice. Maybe it's my normal voice and just sound weird. All good? Good. Okay. Okay, great. So I move forward. So yeah, so I was saying Taobao, and Taobao is C2C, Tmall B2C. Sorry. So yeah, moving forward. What does it mean to be able to sell on these platforms? How can you tell if you have a chance to reach these metrics in order to sell on Tmall Crossborder or JD Global, Tmall Global or JD Worldwide? First, as I said, you can check on the Daigou sales on Taobao. So you can check whether or not people are currently selling your product on the Taobao marketplace. So if these resellers are selling your product, that's maybe the best indication, because if you have this kind of metrics, and here you can see brands which are selling hundreds of products already through Taobao, this will be very easy to convince Tmall to then place a store for you, a flagship store on Tmall. If you don't have this, it's going to be very difficult. There are other good metrics. For instance, you can check on Sogou. So Sogou is a search engine, SOGOU, and they have a sub part which can be used to search within WeChat. So weixin.sogou.com. You can see the URL on the screen. And if you go here and type the name of your brand, you will be able to see the latest articles talking about your brand. So this is very useful to have some kind of social check and checking whether or not, in a very, very simple way, your brand is being mentioned by some key opinion leaders in China and has a presence on WeChat. That could also be an argument in order to convince a reseller or Tmall to place your product. And the last one is Baidu Index. So Baidu Index is very similar to the Google Index. It's gonna enable you to know the fame of your brand on Baidu and whether or not it is being searched. And you can benchmark it against some competitors and see how well you're doing compared to competitors in China using the Baidu Index. So these are three very good ways to give you a preliminary feeling of how well you're doing in China before you get in. And this way you can also know what are the axes where you have to use a bit more momentum. For instance, if you're very weak on Sogou, you might try to put more emphasis on social media in order to accelerate this part. If you're very weak on Baidu Index, it might indicate a problem of brand recognition. And if these indexes are low, then you should not try to go for these e-commerce platforms. It's better to go for social media. It does not mean that you should exclude WeChat and social media if you have good results on these metrics, but WeChat will then more support your actions on the e-commerce platforms. And I'm going to answer the questions here which were asked about the slides being available. Yes, the slides will be made available and will be sent via email along with a recording of this webinar. So don't worry about the slides and don't worry about the recordings. It will all be sent to you. So yeah, so these are the three ways you can actually assess your current success in China. So what about Baidu? Can you actually leverage Baidu in order to drive some good traffic in China? So the first thing to know about Baidu, which is the equivalent of Google, is that it's very different from Google in the sense that it does not have a lot of organic rankings. So on Google, you could just sit and write very good content for like 6 months or a year and start organically appearing among the first results if you have a lot of people backlinking you, basically linking back to your website. This is what we did in our case on Google for Walk the Chat. If you type WeChat something, you will end up with our website very often. This is very difficult to do on Baidu because the paid results are basically spamming all the first page. So here you can see I made a brand keyword research, and I then took a screenshot of my screen. My screen only contains advertising. All the results you can see right now, they all have the mention guanggao in Chinese, which means advertising. So the full first page screen I have when making a research is only ads. And this is generally true for Baidu. Baidu is extremely non-organic. It's really all about SEM, search engine management. is not about SEO, search engine optimization. So if you want to go for Baidu, be aware that it's going to be very, very costly because and it's not going to be organic. As soon as you stop spending, you will lose your traffic. It's also important to know that in China, the search behavior is very different from what it is in the West. So in the West, if you want to buy a t-shirt or blue jeans, you might go on Google and look for t-shirt or blue jeans. In China, you would directly go on Tmall or JD, depending on what you want to buy. We'll talk later about the different categories for the different platforms. But you would not do that through Baidu. So Baidu is good if you're a large brand and you want to keep supporting your fame by adding some additional layer of marketing, or if you're selling services, things which really are difficult to sell through other channels and services which are very, very search driven. So maybe something linked with I don't know, SAT preparation, English test preparation, where it's very, very you believe that search might really give you good ROI, and even though it's going to be very costly. Baidu is a very, very expensive platform, even compared to Google. So I'm not a big fan of Baidu, as you can hear. You can look into it, but likely not going to be the best channel for you to at least to start in China. It's a good support channel once you're already successful. So about e-commerce platforms, as I said, first impulse should be to check your current reputation and search volume in China. If you have large volumes and above 100 million of sales, definitely reach out to Tmall Crossborder or JD Worldwide. And if you don't know how to do that, you can send me an email and I'd be happy to put you in touch with relevant Alibaba teams. Pick the right e-commerce platform based on your product category. So Tmall will be more about consumer goods, cosmetics, all these things, while JD is really about electronics and home appliances. So typically, people will go to Tmall if they want to buy pretty much anything except electronics and home appliances. In this case, they will go to JD. Don't use Baidu unless you're a very large company or selling services. And if you don't meet the above metrics, I think WeChat is really a good option for you, or some of the channels we'll talk about later in the webinar. So I'll dive right in and move forward talking about WeChat, because it's a very interesting tool for you to get started selling in China. So part two, WeChat. I'm just trying to keep an eye on, okay. So the first thing to know about WeChat is that it's more of a messaging app. So WeChat can be seen as a kind of equivalent to Facebook, but in practice, it is much more than Facebook. So it has functions of personal messaging, which are similar to WhatsApp or to Facebook Messenger. They have a social timeline, and they have payment services. So you can see here different screens on WeChat. The screen on the left is the messaging part. So it's simply a conversation. The screen in the middle is a social timeline. So this is really your classic Facebook timeline where people are going to share pictures of the holidays. And the part on the right has actually no equivalent outside China. I could compare it to PayPal, but it would not really be doing justice to these functions because the power of the WeChat wallet goes way beyond payments. It's basically an ecosystem which enables you to integrate with a bunch of services. You can use it to order taxis. I use it to book my flight tickets, to book my train tickets. I also use it to pay for electricity, both in my office and at my place, because in China, you have to top up electricity like you would top up a phone back in the days. So I do that through WeChat. And I use it also to top up my phone if I run out of credit. So these applications are extremely powerful, and we'll see how they can be used for marketing, because the fact of having messaging integrated with social networks, integrated with payments, makes it very easy to take users from a social experience or from a conversation and then bring them to an e-commerce experience where they're going to purchase something, and then maybe take them back to a chat experience if you want to provide them with some customer service. So that's the power of WeChat, is really this integration, and it makes it a very interesting app, especially for companies which don't have the search volume we talked about earlier in China. So the time that people spend on WeChat is crazy. So if you look at this this graph, you can see people spend 1/3 of their time when it comes to the time they spend on mobile applications on WeChat, which is insane. And overall, they spend more than 50% of their time on apps owned by Tencent. Tencent is a group which owns WeChat, and who also owns another mobile applications called QQ, which was basically the top messaging application before WeChat. And that's kind of the crazy story with Tencent, is that they already dominated the messaging market, but they created their own competitor. So they created another messaging application which competed with the main leaders that they already owned. I'm going to answer the question. Are all the attendees on mute? Yes, it's a webinar, so if you want to interact, you are very free to use the questions, the Q&A session, but you can't actually, I mean, nobody can hear you or see you. That's why we switched the URL of the webinar. So yeah, so WeChat is definitely outstanding in terms of its penetration in the Chinese market. So can brands use WeChat in order to reach out to users, given that it's such a fascinating app? Yes, so there are actually many ways that brands can be present on WeChat. And there are different types of accounts. So these accounts are kind of the equivalent of Facebook pages, but WeChat made it in a way which is much more complicated than it should be, I would say. So it's kind of difficult to wrap our hands around. So there are 4 types of accounts on WeChat. The 2 main ones you have to focus on are subscription accounts and service accounts. These are the 2 accounts which are used for marketing. So they are used by companies which want to reach out to end users and send out push notifications. The main difference between these 2 accounts is one is more visible, but can send less messages. So these are the service accounts. So subscription accounts are less visible, but can send 1 message per day. And service accounts are more visible, but they can send less messages, only 4 per month or about 1 per week. So these are the 2 accounts which are really like Facebook pages, although they have differences, and I will talk about it. They really are used for marketing. And then you have enterprise accounts, which actually have unlimited push notifications, but they require to have 2-side authentication. So people have to follow you, and you need to also approve them. So this forces to be with people where you already have a relationship with these users. This is typically used for internal management of companies, or it's used if you have a small number of, for instance, distributors, and you want to use WeChat as a way to stay in touch with these distributors. And the last type is mini programs. So there is a lot of controversy around mini programs. I personally think they're crap. I really don't like mini programs because they are not very good at reaching out to people in terms of sending out push notifications. They are written in a proprietary language owned by Tencent. And I've been critical before they were launched, saying they were pretty bad. They've been performing pretty bad since the launch. So far, I was right. Things might change because Tencent keeps adding new features to mini programs. But they actually today are not performing that well. So Rick is asking, can Australian get a WeChat wallet function? You actually can't access it directly if you're completely in Australia. So if you're registered, if your phone was registered in Australia and you don't have any relationship with China, you can't access it. It's possible for foreigners who are living in China to access WeChat wallet if they signed up with a Chinese number. And it's opening in some other regions like Hong Kong, outside mainland China, and other countries like South Africa, where WeChat Wallet is now available. And I will talk later about how foreign companies can open these accounts. So bear with me for a moment. So when I talk about accounts being more or less visible, or what am I talking about? This is what I'm talking about. The service accounts are the ones which appear just like friends. So here you can see two service accounts, Purple Bamboo and Empower Charities. They appear in my friends list just like, and when they send me a push notification, it's just like if a friend was to send me a message. So it's extremely visible, it's extremely disruptive, and that's why these accounts can only send one message per week, because they are so visible and they can easily get spammy. The subscription accounts, they also appear in the chat folder, but they are stacked in this blue folder. So if I were to click on this blue folder called subscriptions, I would see all my subscription accounts. So they can send one message per day, but much less visible. So in practice, you would really want to use a subscription account if you really care about sending daily content. Typically, if you're a newspaper or you're really based on media. For instance, one of our clients is a finance company, and they need to send out every morning some reports about the market. So in this case, subscription account is a very good fit. Otherwise, if you're doing e-commerce, if you're trying to sell stuff, service account is so much more visible, and it has extra functions such as payments and targeting, that it's actually a better choice. So all of these are actually official accounts. The four kinds of accounts are official accounts. Subscription, so they can be subscriptions official accounts or service official accounts, but they are all official accounts. So the interesting thing with these accounts is once you open them, it's not just about sending out push notifications. So this is our account being open. And you can see these accounts kind of look like a Facebook Messenger account. They have this kind of chat interface. But the interesting thing is down the bottom, you can access menus, and these menus can access can be linked to e-commerce websites. And there is a kind of way to build e-commerce websites for WeChat. They have a very, very defined user experience. Actually, WeChat published some documents for programmers to teach them how to design for this kind of WeChat shops. And once you open these WeChat shops, usually you're going to be logged in via WeChat, and you're going to be able to pay via WeChat. So that's the beauty of this integration. Basically, you're accessing content on your social circles. Friends are sharing an article. You see this article is written by this company or by this official account, and you're going to follow it. Once you follow it, you're going to be able to be taken to additional services, including e-commerce. And that's the beauty of WeChat, is this integration between social and brands and e-commerce, which make it very, very powerful once again for marketers. And if we see the number of people using WeChat shops is growing super fast. It's been doubling between 2015 and the first quarter and 2016. And this e-commerce is happening through several trends. It's happening through public accounts, through sharing on moments, through links to other third-party apps, and of course through an integration with jingdong.com. So here are a few examples of companies which are doing quite well selling on WeChat, to give you a sense of the trend, and as we said, of the fact that quite a bit of sales are happening today on WeChat. This is an account called Xiao Xiao Bao Mama. So it's once again, it's this kind of account sending every day some news, and every day it's sending news about how to raise your kids. It's really targeting mothers. The following is 90% female and mostly mothers. It has 2 million followers, and the shop, which is linked to this account, is generating 30 million RMB of revenues per month. This is about $5 million per month of revenues, mostly through all happening through WeChat. And this is mostly happening through leveraging group buying and limited time offer. So every morning at the same time, there is a limited time offer, a limited group buy. So people have to join in, and they have to share it with their friends in order to buy together with their friends and get the chance to buy this product and to buy it at a special discounted price. And this is, once again, the interest of WeChat is because it's combining e-commerce and social. You can take people from social to e-commerce. You can also take people from e-commerce to social. So you can tell them, if you want to get the discount, then you have to share with your friends, because people are already on WeChat, so they have access to all their friends list. And it makes it very, very powerful in order to drive growth, to have this kind of group buying deals. Similar, another WeChat account with 80,000. Yeah, sorry, I'm saying the connection is unstable. With 80,000 followers, but already generating 8 million renminbi of sales, so more than $1 million USD in just a few months. Yeah, let me just maybe switch to a different Wi-Fi network, which might be more stable. Yeah, can you still hear me? Hello? Is the sound more clear now? Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, good. Awesome. So 80,000 followers, and in just a few months generated more than $1 million USD of sales, and all of this through WeChat, by once again using this kind of group buying, limited offers. We talked before about the fact that Tmall and Jingdong are really about having search volume. So WeChat is really the opposite. Tmall and Jingdong are search-based. It means that people are going there with a purpose. They really want to buy something, and they go there and they look for this thing. For WeChat, it's very different. People might not have any purpose. They're just being here, hanging out with their friends, and there comes this account which is suggesting a very good deal, short time, group buy, and it's much more of an impulse drive to buying. So once again, that's what makes WeChat more interesting for companies which are less present in China, is because it has this much more impulse-driven way of buying. So that's a very different paradigm. And if you already have search traffic, maybe WeChat is just something which is going to support your business. It might not be as central. But if your business is not just about search, if it's more about impulsive buy, if it's more something like cosmetics or fashion or F&B, then WeChat is going to be a very good asset for you. So another case study is one we did with in collaboration with an agency in New Zealand, helping sell some Manuka honey. And the interesting thing with WeChat is also you can get started very, very fast. So by actually launching this brand on WeChat, we could generate 10,000 USD of sales in about a week. And the preparation phase took also a couple of weeks. So these are still small numbers at this stage, but it's interesting because it's very fast. Usually, in order to get started in China, you will need to prepare for a very long time. WeChat enables you to hit the market faster. So how do you create a WeChat account? I'm going to pull up the question. Somebody asked, how can companies open accounts in China? So foreign companies can open both subscription and service accounts in China. You have three main ways to go about this, to open. So I'm just going to get rid of the questions so I have a clear screen if more people ask. Good. So you have three main ways to go about it. First is, of course, set up a company in China. So you have a type of company which can be created by foreigners, which is called WOFE, wholly owned foreign enterprise. And these types of companies are very long to open, takes about 6 months to a year. It's a very costly process, at least 20,000 USD plus some operating expenses that you're then going to have to spend every year. And it's a lot of hassle. So not easy. It's great if you're a large company and you have large long-term plans in China and you want to hire very fast. Not very good for testing the market. You have another option, which I think is the best option, is to apply through the Tencent Overseas WeChat Accounts program. So there is a special process to create WeChat accounts with foreign business license. It's not possible for all countries yet, but it's possible for most countries which are trading a lot with China, like Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, US, Canada, Thailand, so on and so forth. And it's actually a long process, 1 to 2 months to create the account. But once you have this account, you own it 100%, and it's completely visible to mainland Chinese users. So sometimes there are some misunderstanding here. There are some accounts which are created overseas but not visible from mainland China. And this type of account is a special application process. You can reach out to me via email if you have questions about this specific process. But basically, through this process, we can open accounts which are visible from mainland China and completely owned by a third-party foreign business, by your foreign business license. And the other option is to create accounts via a local agency in China, which is going to use their business license and then basically create the account for you. So in this case, the account would have your logo, it would have your description, it would have your name, but it would still legally be owned by this entity in China. So this is really a question of risk and trust. If you think you can trust the local company, then all good, there is no problem. But you might actually run into some issues if this company decides somehow to do anything bad to you. It's possible since about 2 months ago to transfer followers from one company to the other. But until the point where maybe later down the road you create your own company and you transfer the followers, you're going to be very exposed to this third-party company. So it's a pass, but it's also a risk. And I will just very briefly mention what WorkTheChat does. So it's a shameless plug time. What do we do? We help companies set up these cross-border accounts. So we have a platform which enables companies to create cross-border shops with cross-border WeChat payments. It means on these shops, clients pay in renminbi, but the money is sent abroad in USD or foreign currencies. We help foreign companies set up WeChat on their current website. So if you have a website with a lot of SKUs, a lot of sales already, maybe you want to make it WeChat friendly. So set up WeChat login, WeChat payment. And we have companies purchase traffic on WeChat via WeChat ads. In particular, we have a partnership with Tencent, which enables us to display ads to Chinese tourists. Yeah, so Toby asked a very good question. Is there any differences on the functions for option 2 and 3? There are some very, very small differences between the accounts created by overseas business license and the ones created locally. So for instance, one of the difference is that when you manage the welcome message, you would have to manage it via the API. You won't be able to manage it directly from the graphical interface of the WeChat account. You will need to have a programmer use a kind of separate CRM system in order to set up your welcome message. So very, very small detail, doesn't really impact your business, but it is there. There is also going to be a difference when you want to open up new functions like WeChat payment or ads. Then you're going to go through a different application process, but you can still do it. So if you want to set up WeChat payment, for instance, you will set up WeChat cross-border payments to receive money directly to your overseas account. So you're going to have to go through a special process for that. Same for ads. You're going to have to talk with overseas ads team from Tencent. So these two types of accounts, from the end user perspective, they are exactly the same. They can't tell the difference. Just if they check the countries, they will see that the account was created in a different country, but that's rather a good thing. And they have exactly the same functions. And the process, when you have to apply to extra functions, is a bit different. What the worst could happen for option 3, it would be that the other company maybe closes the account or tries to blackmail you in order to ask you for money in order to get the account back, because they can tell you, because they own it, so they can decide to close it, they can decide to change the name of the account, they can decide to spam the followers if they want. So you're quite exposed. If you don't trust the company which is creating the account, they could do very much anything with it. For does WeChat also facilitate payments? Actually, yeah, we are working with payment distributors for this. So we have two ways to do this. We have a partnership with Tencent to help us open the WeChat accounts and the cross-border payment accounts. And Tencent also has local distributors in every country, which helps them basically distribute WeChat cross-border payments. So depending on the company, we can either help you create the WeChat cross-border payment directly with Tencent, or we can go through one of these distributors. And these distributors usually are nice because they're enabled to apply faster and they have lower settlement amounts, down to $500 US dollars. While if you apply directly with Tencent, you will actually have to pay. The settlement amount is 5,000 USD, and the application time is quite long. It's 2 to 3 months. So it's a long process. So can you confirm what platform Alibaba owns, and just WeChat and QQ are owned by Tencent? So Alibaba owns a lot of things, but mostly owns Tmall, which is B2C, Taobao, which is C2C, so between customers, and Alibaba, which is actually a B2B platform. So these are the main things that Alibaba own. On top of that, all of these companies invest in many other companies. So for instance, Alibaba invested in a food delivery company called Ele.me. They invested in Kuayidache, which is a kind of competitor to Uber, which then merged with another company to create Didi Truthing, which then bought Uber in China. So they're also in the ride-hailing business. They do videos. They are into a lot of companies. And it's the same for Tencent. So Tencent owns WeChat, QQ, but also owns Tencent Video, and purchased like a bunch of other companies which like invested in Didi Dacher, recently invested in ride sharing, bike sharing companies. So there are very, very big ecosystems. Companies in China tend to invest in a bunch of other companies which are not directly related to the industry. Very different from the West. In the West, maybe Facebook will only make very, very targeted investment in like Oculus Rift, WhatsApp, Instagram. In China, people invest in everything, and especially the three big IT companies, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, BAT, have big portfolio, including a lot of companies. Yes. Sorry, I'm just dealing with that. Is WeChat good for affluent luxury buyers? Yeah, definitely. WeChat is most popular actually in tier 1 cities, in bigger cities. That's where they have higher penetration rate of more than 90%. So it's best for actually affluent buyers. The minimum transaction on WeChat payment used to be quite low, but it's getting higher and higher. So for us, we see on our platform, typical transactions are of a few $100s, like maybe 300 to 500 USD for typical transactions. So I think it can go much higher than that. We don't today sell huge luxury goods on our platform. It's more like mid-end products, but we can definitely see a trend of WeChat being used to sell more and more expensive products. And is the first tool in the first pick a tool of WeChat or a tool from WeChat? The first pick is actually it's our platform, so it's HTML5 platform. So basically, we built a shop inside WeChat, which is HTML5 and which is integrating all the WeChat APIs, including login and cross-border payment. And what about logistics? So logistics actually are we partner with local logistics companies which help handle logistics for our clients. A lot of our clients are using the free trade zones or shipping from Hong Kong because that's where they get the best efficiency in terms of handling returns and all these kind of things. Some of our clients do direct shipping from Europe. The customers actually love direct shipping from Europe if they just receive the product. It makes it more difficult for handling returns. So it's really a trade-off. The customers will really enjoy having something directly coming from a European or a European country or the US, but returns becomes a bit more of a hassle. And how do we target Chinese tourists traveling abroad? We can do that through a special program from Tencent. So Tencent gives this ability to do this. So I will just stop answering questions for a while. There are a few more, but I would like to move forward with the presentation because we're almost done with time, and I would like to talk about some of the some of the smaller applications which can be used. And just to answer the last question, yes, the experience we have today with our shops is a web view. It's a web view built on AngularJS, Angular 2, and integrating the WeChat API. So I would like to spend a bit of time talking about newer apps. So some of them are very new. Some of them are kind of already been around for a while, but are really gaining traction these days. So the first one I want to talk about is called Zhohu. Zhohu is not a brand new app by any means. It's been around for quite a few years, a bit after Quora. It was created in 2011. And if you're not familiar with Quora, so Zhohu is a Q&A platform. So you can ask questions and people can answer. And depending on the number of likes, the answers can appear higher or lower. And it has 65 million registered users, almost 20 million daily active users, millions of questions, and now they also offer live streaming for classes. So they have experts giving live streaming classes, and you can pay for these classes on Zhohu. It's a very, very interesting platform. You might ask, how can I sell through this platform? Well, here's a case study of a former Microsoft designer who started a cosmetics beauty WeChat account. And the way she started was by starting on Zhohu. So she started by creating an account on Zhohu, basically answering questions about cosmetics. And because this was a few years ago, the platform was very, very new, she quickly gathered a very big following of more than 100,000 followers. Then she took this following to WeChat. So she pushed her followers to follow her on WeChat, and she grew in a few months to more than 50,000 WeChat followers. Today, she has more than 1 million followers. I forgot the exact figures, but she definitely over 1 million. She launched a shop, raised money, and today, one advertising on her account is charged between 20 and 50,000 US dollars for one push notification. So that's the level of influence that she managed to reach, and she started once again through this Q&A platform. So I think this is a kind of important point through all these parts is if you really want to be efficient, it's quite interesting to lower hanging fruits. So Zhohu, I think, is a very interesting case because I think now it's a bit past its prime, but it's still quite hot. So there's still quite a lot to do with it. It's not the early days anymore. But by the people who were on Zhohu a few years ago really made a killing because they managed to get traction and then transfer this traffic to WeChat. WeChat is a place where people are. So it's also the most competitive place. It's where you want to be in the end. That's where you want to reach out to your users. But it's also a difficult place to get traction, to get initial interest from users. So it's very smart to start with a platform which has less competition and grow a following and then move this following to WeChat. Video apps are getting growing traction in China. So you have two big kind of aggregate of platforms which are co-owned by either Alibaba or Tencent, Youku Tudou and Sohu, Ichi, Tencent. and Bilibili for live streaming. This is a bit like what I said for Baidu, in the sense that there is a lot of non-organic traffic, non-organic rankings on video platforms. So on YouTube, you might actually be able to grow organically by basically getting more views and then getting your video recommended by other videos. On all the Chinese platforms, it's really hand-picked videos by editors which end up on the front page. So the ecosystem is much less organic, it's much more about paid, or in this case, even about relationships, because if you have good relationship with the editors from these platforms, it's actually much easier to get on first page. So it's a difficult place to really get to the top, and it requires more local knowledge, but it's definitely something that Chinese customers consume more and more. So it's an interesting place to look at. And this is another example case study of a young entrepreneur who used videos to make videos about life abroad, because she studied in France and in the US. And she then grew a following through Tudo and Yoku and all of these platforms. And then exactly the same thing as for the previous case, converted this following to WeChat and managed to generate millions of RMB of sales for a long wine subscription business where people would receive wine every month. And then she started diversifying to new types of products, raising money in order to scale her services. But once again, starting from services which have less competition and then moving this following to WeChat. Another very interesting platform is called Toutiao. So Toutiao is a content application, a bit similar to Medium. It's kind of like native content apps. 175 million monthly active users. That's quite a big platform, although I talk about it in the small platforms, but it's not that small. It's very popular, especially in smaller cities, and it's very useful to use if you're writing content for China anyway. You might very well repurpose it and also put it on Toutiao, because you're gonna get additional traffic from that, and the platform is very active. So the same way that you might have automatic posting of your articles from your blog to Medium in the West, you can do exactly the same in China for Toutiao. And they have a very good algorithm which enables to target users based on their interest. Live streaming has been very hot in 2016. The market is definitely starting to concentrate. Out of all the companies which were started in 2016, only a third are still live today. So the market is getting more competitive. Yinke is one of the leaders. You can see on this curve, it's been growing very fast and kept growing in terms of this market. The way the live streaming market in China is working is mostly based on digital gifting. So this is me doing a live stream when I was playing around with Yinke, I think 6 months ago or a year ago. So basically I just appeared, spoke in Chinese for a while, and after a while people started giving me money. I made about 7 kuai, so a bit more than $1 on this live stream. And some people are more popular than I am, and they actually managed to have dozens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people attending the live stream and make quite significant amounts of money. So it's also interesting if you look at, so the live streaming market has been growing and keeps growing, although you can see the growth is expected to flatten around 2018. And you can see it's actually interesting if you look at the age distribution of live streaming in China, mostly used by people between 26 and 35, and for people who don't have such high salaries usually. So it's used a lot, especially for the smaller apps in tier 3, tier 4, or even smaller cities as a form of like evening entertainment, and sometimes additional source of revenue, because some people who don't make a lot of money use live streaming as a way to actually generate some kind of side income. And finally, I want to talk about this latest new app, which is called Douyin. So it's short remix video over pop music. So it's kind of short. It's a bit like Musical.ly in the US. I actually tried to include one in this video. I'm not sure if it's gonna play all right, but it kind of illustrates the point. I'm gonna try to play it. I'm not sure if you get the sound. It's kind of weird. So the apps have a lot of editing capabilities inside the app, which enable to do all this editing work. And it's getting quite popular today in China because a lot of people are using it to create this kind of very, very creative short videos. It's kind of fun. Actually, it's very addictive because people are very, very creative on how they use the editing capability of the app to actually create very interesting videos. So all of these small apps actually are helping to build a market of key opinion leaders who are growing following on these apps and can be later used to promote products. So this app is, I think, popular for the last few weeks. Like, it's a very, very new trend. And same as we said for Joro, by taking over these low-hanging fruits, there is opportunity to actually make quite a bit of a splash by looking at key opinion leaders who are not too crowded yet. They don't have too much demand. So the name of the app is Douyin. And getting some short-term traction. Many of these apps sometimes have a kind of a short lifetime. So it's perfect if you want to purchase some influencer time and then drive traffic to another channel. So back to your WeChat. Maybe not worth investing too much to build your own following because it might die out very fast. But for marketers, it doesn't need to be a long-term trend. You can just surf on the wave while it's high, and then when it goes down, move to the next app. And yes, surfing on a larger trend of short videos apps. So WeChat has its own short video service. Kuaishou is very popular in tier 4 cities. And there are other apps like Miaopai and others in this field, which is getting more and more crowded. Yeah. So this is a final conclusion of the webinar. So just to conclude, Tmall and JD still dominate most of the e-commerce market, but there are better choices for very large brands with existing search volume. WeChat is a very interesting multi-purpose app which combines messaging, social network, and e-commerce, and is providing great opportunity for the SMEs who want to enter the market without spending too much money upfront through a more step-by-step approach. And a lot of smaller apps, but some of them are quite large. We talked about Totia, which has almost 200 million monthly active users, enable companies to have more of a guerrilla style marketing strategy and to drive traffic surfing on these latest trends. Richard is asking, could you cite brands using KOLs for market penetration? So yeah, it can be done on many levels. So I mentioned earlier one of our clients who's managed to sell, like, in just a few weeks, 10,000 USD of product. So this was done through a KOL. It was done through a key opinion leader talking about New Zealand. But you can see a lot of bigger brands which are also using bigger KOLs. So for instance, you had Papi Diong, the biggest KOL maybe today in China, who worked with some cosmetics brands for the big Singles Day holiday in China, which is a big shopping holiday, the Chinese equivalent to the Black Friday. And this is really useful, especially if you're a new brand, to actually drive this initial traffic. Federica is asking how to convey foreign currency in foreign account from renminbi payment. So as I said, Tencent offers cross-border payment services. So they have their own system and their own partnership with banks so that they can do this conversion. So usually when we create a shop for a customer, we would actually go through Tencent to approve the customers. They would check your website. They would check your history of transactions, of your banking history. And then they would open this account, which would automatically convert renminbi to USD upon purchase. I'm asked, I understand that KOL in China are very expensive. How would you suggest a brand to choose a suitable KOL? So yeah, KOLs are very expensive in China. Usually, to get a good KOL, you have to spend at least 2,000 to 5,000 USD, and that's really a minimum. How do you pick a suitable KOL? Usually, I like KOLs which are between 50 and 200,000 followers because they are basically already popular, but not too popular yet to be too expensive. They have not been doing too much advertising yet, and below 50,000 RMB, 50,000 followers. Sorry, it might be cheaper, but I would not recommend it because then the KOL does not have the necessary influence to really convert to sales. Is there a live streaming function on WeChat? Not yet, but it's definitely something which is supposed to be released. There is a lot of rumor about that. We're talking about products. What about promoting foreign news services? I don't think this is possible. At least we don't have the possibility of opening accounts for news services. We can, the partnership we have to Tencent for creating accounts is only for e-commerce. How about brand registration? So brand registration is definitely something you should do in China. It's not very expensive. It takes a lot of time. It takes usually a couple of years to get the brand properly registered. But as you do your cross-border sales, we can introduce you to some lawyers who can help you register your brand, which is quite important, at least so that somebody else does not register it for you, because it's a classic problem in China that people might have the brand registered by another company, and then they try to enter the market and they get sued for using their own brand. So it's actually quite important to start with brand registration. There is a period of 3 months during which other brands can basically dispute your claim to register the brand. Usually it goes through easily, and then you need to wait maybe a year at least to get the final trademark issued. But if you pass this 3 months period, it's already quite safe to start promoting. In the end, what is roughly the investment for a foreign SME to open their own WeChat shop? It's not cheap. We usually advise about 50,000 USD at least over the first year, including everything, including creating the account, setting up the payment, designing the account, and mostly generating traffic, because the expensive part is not going to be so much about creating the shop. The expensive part is going to be about paying people to promote your products. And if you want to get results, I would really recommend to spend at least 50,000 USD on the first year. Otherwise, you might just put money and not get any results. Once again, most of this 50,000 USD or even 100,000 USD if you can, most of them will be spent on traffic, because what we don't want is create a shop and the shop is just here and not getting any traffic, not getting any traction. In order for the shop to be successful, you need to somehow pay for traffic to start with. And this is better done, I think, through key opinion leaders. Same question from Henrik. What is the minimum investment for a company to see some results from a marketing campaign in China? I would say 3,000 to 5,000 USD on one campaign. And I would suggest to have these kind of campaigns every month also to really create some momentum. How much do we charge? No, we don't charge commission-based. We charge a flat fee for the store, which is between 200 and 500 US dollars per month to use our platform, to use your stores. How can SME make revenue from WeChat shop in first year? Well, you can make revenue. Profits, I think it will take at least 6 to 8 months to really become profitable. And this is in a rather optimistic outlook to be very profitable on your shop, so that basically your account becomes big enough so that you can have your own following, you can drive your own traffic, and you can become very profitable. During the first 6 months, you will rely much more on key opinion leaders. So you will spend money in order to get revenues and in order to get followers. And past this point where you get your initial momentum, you get a chance to actually turn a profit. So once again, you need to be able to spend in order to get results. I think that's pretty much it. We are a bit past the time, so I'm gonna stop it here. I see there are a bunch of other questions on the dashboard, but unfortunately, they are coming faster than I can answer them. So if you have more questions, feel free to drop me an email. The email I use for the blast email for the webinar is actually my personal email, so you can actually answer it directly with questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer. And as I said, I will make the slides and the recording available to all the people who attended. So you will get an email hopefully later today, at the latest tomorrow, with everything. That's pretty much it. So hope you liked it. If you have feedback, I love feedback, so let me know what you didn't like. We're gonna do webinars pretty much every week, starting this week. So about WeChat ads, about key opinion leaders, deep diving into some of the topics I've talked about today. So if you have preferences or things you would like to hear about, let me know, because there's really a lot to talk about, and we have a lot of content on these topics. So super happy to deep dive. And yeah, thanks a lot for attending. And yeah, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.